when we look at the political space that we have, we've seen what has happened in the country right now. The whole debate is whether the president should dissolve parliament as advised by the Chief Justice. Is this constitutional provision mandatory for the president to do? Was it sound advice coming from the judiciary, the Chief Justice? Did it follow procedure? When the people have complained that this parliament has done 10 years without coming up with a proper framework of ensuring that we have gender balance in the two houses of representation, National Assembly and the Senate, do we heap the blame on Parliament, and therefore is it right for Parliament to go home? All manner of interpretation comes into this. Oh, the president must do this. No, the president now does not have to do this. He can take some time before he does this. And then we look at also what, for example, we've heard from the leader of ODM. The leader of ODM has said, yes, we are where we are. It's indeed true that Parliament has been unable to enact legislation to bring effect to this constitutional requirement. Then also, there's an opportunity for the people to exercise their sovereignty directly without using their elected leaders. And listening to that and listening to what the ODM leader has talked about recently, it's about the Building Bridges initiative, whose report he says is ready and should very soon be presented to him and the president. And then after that, we start looking at then what is it that the people of Kenya have told the BBI task force? What is it that then we do to fix what is not working in our country to ensure that it works perfectly this time? Then it takes us into a referendum at some point. He says early next year, there may be a referendum. One of the things that some people have said could be addressed by this constitutional referendum would be fixing this quagmire that we have in terms of how to realize the gender balance in National Assembly and in the Senate. Mm-hmm. So is this an opportunity for BBI? Is this a bad side for BBI? Is BBI then going to be like the solution pill that we swallow and we don't need to dissolve Parliament, or we dissolve Parliament and at the same time we vote for BBI so that the new Parliament comes in with a fresh BBI look and mandate? What is it? When you listen to the interpretation by politicians, you are sort of left confused, especially when those politicians are also at the same time lawyers. Yeah. Because they will say, the law is clear. Edwin Sifuna, the ODM Secretary General, is a lawyer. And the other person that we're hoping to speak to today is Kipchumba Murkomen, the Senator for Elgeyo Marakwet, is a lawyer. If these two gentlemen speak, are they going to have the same interpretation of that same law?
This discipline, I think, understands those vagaries well, and that is why we have a referee. It's called the court. Mm-hmm. And the refereeship allows for even further complaints. If it's a matter that goes to a magistrate's court, nothing happens, you take a lawyer to maybe the chief magistrate or resident magistrate. Same with the bench, the higher office of the bench. You go to an appeals court. I mean, there's an entire process that is supposed to provide you with refereeing that should leave you with an understanding of what a group of people or the thinking around the law, when you put subject it to a group of people who understand the law and have understood it for a long time, have arrived at. And this is what guides what we call our legal, is it called jurisprudence? Yes. Mm-hmm. So it isn't as though all is lost. It is, we do have a mechanism. Some consider it tedious, but if you look at what is at stake, it should be tedious. If you look at the ramifications of these decisions when they are made, then it should be tedious.
It should be.
It shouldn't be something that is hurried. And if there's a debate, and if there's a vigorous debate, so much the better, because then you have an opportunity as a layperson. I'm talking about myself here. I have an opportunity to actually understand some of these things that ordinarily I wouldn't have time to read or understand. But the debate now forces me to listen and understand. And the conclusion I've come to is that these things are not as simple as they sound.
It's complex.
Yes, they're not as simple as they sound. And even the drafters of the Constitution and those who put it in place understood this.
Shall we bring in our guest now, Edwin Sifuna, the ODM Secretary General? Good morning, Edwin.
Good morning, Eric. I have lost you on Zoom, so I'm only with you on the phone. Is that okay?
That's all right. We can see you on Zoom. We haven't lost you.
I can't see you.
It's okay. That
We can see you,
that
that's
works
what's
well
important.
for us.
Okay. It's a good morning, so let's proceed.
All right, Edwin, let's start
Yes.
with, first of all, your interpretation and reaction to the advice that came from the Chief Justice to the President. Dissolve Parliament.
Yeah, I think it is unfair for you to lump all the lawyers who are also politicians together. I personally have drawn a distinction between lawyers who are members of parliament and lawyers who are not members of parliament. Because when it comes to members of parliament, it is a known fact that the conflict of interest does not allow them to interpret any other way that decision by the Chief Justice other than in a way that accords with their personal interest. So it is very normal for members of parliament, even who are non-lawyers. You have seen even my friend John Mbadi is an accountant, but his interpretation of the decision by the CJ is the same as my senior Otende Amol. And they are allowed to, because as far as we are concerned, Zodian, people are allowed to express their views on these things. From my own perspective, I agree with what the party leader said, that in fact, it is a fact that Parliament has been unable to meet the dictates of the Constitution, and that everybody was aware of the attendant consequences for failure to do what is dictated under the Constitution. I also believe, as a lawyer, that there is no two ways to interpret the word shall. That in fact the Constitution leaves very little in terms of wiggle room for the Chief Justice and for the President. So when our party leader, for instance, says that there must be very serious consultations, it is not to say that we are giving the President a choice. I think there is no choice in the Constitution. But there are emergent issues, and I'm sure everybody agrees that there are a number of gray areas that need to be cleared, so that when we proceed as a country, we all know what we are doing and what the consequences of those actions are going to be.
Mr. Sifuna, did I hear you correctly? And am I interpreting what you said correctly when you say that your colleagues who have a legal background and training are not capable of partiality?
When they are members of parliament, we have seen it time and again. This is not something I need to say, CT. You know it. When it comes to the collective interest of parliament, your profession does not matter at all. It is the parochial interest of parliament as an institution always takes over. So this is not something that is new. And we expected that, with the exception of only maybe a few female members of parliament, the rest of the parliamentarians are very clear that they don't want to go home.
It's very clear. A lot of things were said. So do you think that the argument that is being put forward for the Chief Justice, and if he makes the decision, or if the President goes ahead to make whatever decision that he would make, so many arguments have come out as a result of this. Is it is this a robust argument to preserve their jobs, or to actually hope that the country is better? Because they talk about, if Parliament is dissolved, we're looking at potential danger in the country politically. Do you think these arguments are as a result of fear of losing their jobs, or are these arguments founded?
I think for me, I would prefer a discussion where we separate the parochial interest of Parliament and also just look at the practical difficulties that there would be, for instance, in the implementation of that order. I know that the matter has gone before the court now. What is there are some strange things that I need to point out. Number one, in the communication from the Chief Justice, he said that even when they were invited, the two speakers of Parliament, the National Assembly and the Senate, only filed POs against the petitions that were presented to the Chief Justice. But they never took time to file submissions. So I was a bit taken aback when I see Speaker Muturi, after the fact, now giving us submissions. He should have put those material before the Chief Justice, and probably the decision would have been different. They have raised some valid legal questions that I believe will be ventilated as to whether, for instance, the order was directed at the 11th Parliament or to Parliament. The question as to whether the requirement under Article 27 is the same one as Article 100, because they argue that they have passed a bill before the National Assembly to deal with Article 100, which encompasses not just the gender question, but also the question with persons with disabilities and youth. And that bill is actually before the Senate right now. Whether that satisfies the requirement under Article 27 is a valid argument. But there are some arguments that I cannot just entertain personally. When somebody says, even if Parliament is now dissolved, the new Parliament will still not meet the gender threshold. That argument is misplaced, because Parliament is not being punished for not meeting the gender quota. They are being punished for failing in their legislative duty. In my view, my argument as a lawyer, I understand the responsibility on Parliament to be just pass a legislation that sets a framework for the realization of the gender principle. Any legislation would actually remove that noose from around the neck of Parliament. And even when you come and start saying, oh, the responsibility is on the state, but the legislative authority of the state is vested in one institution only. So that failure they cannot run away from, but there are questions, including under Article 261.8, when it talks about the new Parliament having the same amount of time to pass the new legislation. Does that mean that the new Parliament gets 5 years? Because the period in the schedule is 5 years.
Yeah.
So for me, there are political arguments which you can always understand when people come from selfish positions, but there are also serious legal issues that would be interesting to see ventilated.
But it sounds like, you're excusing the fact that they can be partisan because they're protecting their self-interest. But is this what is expected of a leader at that point? Should a leader at that point, say, divorce their self-interest and their partisanship from just the fact, this is what we are supposed to do, we have done it, we have not done it, and therefore we deserve to be punished, or we don't deserve to be punished? Not just taking a position just because it suits you to advance that idea to the public. Is that is the ideal situation, Eric, but you must always understand, you must accept the reality as it is. It is very easy for you to speak when it is parliamentarian, but I've seen the same behavior even when it comes to members of the media. Yep.
You're just talking here, but when the day comes that we are saying we want to fire all of you at Spice FM, you start a union and start saying Spice FM is they are the best presenters and hosts. So we can acknowledge self-interest. We can filter out views which we know are being driven by those parochial interests, and then have a proper discussions on what we can objectively agree are serious issues that need to be dealt with.
How would you know? How would you know if somebody was not fronting an argument? How would you know if somebody was fronting an argument and it had nothing to do with any kind of vested interest? How would you know that this person on the other side then was actually being authentic with their argument?
I don't know. I mean, there is no way to measure when someone is objective. But we can, to a certain degree, tell when an argument is being driven by parochial interest. When you see unanimity across the House, for instance, on any issue, especially that is directly targeted at the welfare of the same people, then you can always conclude that argument is coming from a selfish interest point of view. Many of us were surprised by some of the arguments advanced by people we have a lot of respect for. They are also members of my own political party, but they are entitled to those views because everybody has their own interpretation of some of these things.
Again, Mr. Sifuna, am I to understand that if you were in their position, you would behave exactly the way they are behaving?
I am saying it is possible. It is possible because if you look at the extent of even financial exposure that some of these members are in, they keep bringing up the fact that they are servicing loans, they are not prepared to go to the ground. Politically, we know that some of them say the first 3 years ni ya kurudisha ile pesa ulitumia kwa campaign. Then now this final 2 years is to put together a kitty for the election. So if an election is called right now, it is going to be a problem. Then there are others who come from areas where they have been imagining that their party bosses will not be of any significant influence on their re-election in 2022. Suddenly they are realizing there's a prospect of elections when that guy is still in charge and is still the regional kingpin. like some people in Mount Kenya are pissing their pants, forgive my English, but the very idea that Uhuru Kenyatta can superintend over elections in Mount Kenya while he's still president and not in 2022 when they expected him to be named, it sends very serious shivers down people's spine. Yeah. For many other people, they could actually be even other unforeseen positives. For instance, if the interpretation under 261 Article 8 is that the new parliament gets 5 years, it could help with some of the problems we have seen and the people who have been pushing for separation of elections, that we will now have parliamentary elections midterm, and that when we go into 2022, we'll only have 3 ballots. Yeah? So it is a whole discussion, and there's a lot of gray areas, and there's nothing wrong in engaging in that discourse.
When you look at now what we're calling the parochial interests of politicians and what they are advancing, I mean, Chapter 6 of the Constitution and also the Leadership and Integrity Act, they raise the bar in terms of what's expected of a person who is given and bestowed upon this great honor of being a leader. So, and this is where I want to push it again and say, because the Constitution and the law has already raised that bar, should somebody who is in Parliament not first openly advance their parochial interests and self-interest, but also look at what is in the best interest of the people and the country?
Yeah, I believe in an ideal situation that would be what would be expected, Latif. But I have implored on you to live in the real world, and that more often than not, when there is a clash between public interest and self-interest, there is always going to be one that gives way. More often than not, it is a public interest that has to give way.
And I would assume that the purpose of having it in the Constitution and in the law is so that it's very clear that when there's a clash, what takes precedent is public interest.
Correct. But that's the idea. There's many things that are prescribed in law. I mean, all of us know that, for instance, you're not supposed to give or take bribes. But many Kenyans do it without even blinking an eye. So that is an example of a clash of public interest and self-interest.
All right. Now, again, I want to ask about political parties. And
yes,
when this matter has been canvassed in court, it has come out of the courts that also political parties could play a role in ensuring that we achieve this gender balance, and this is at the nomination stage. Right?
Yes.
So can we also say that our political parties, we are here because our political parties have also failed?
Yeah, we take a certain level of responsibility, but I will give you a very good example, Latif.
Yeah.
When the by-elections were called in the 5 electoral areas, we actually advertised, and we said we are inviting people to apply to participate in our party primaries. In some way, we didn't receive a single application from a woman. So is it that I am now, as the SG, required to go into the villages to look for a lady and forcefully, include her in this thing, or what?
Yes.
What we understand from the
I've answered. I've said yes.
I don't think. I don't think.
This is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying.
It will clash with other. It will clash with other political rights in the Constitution. You cannot force someone.
I understand this. I'm actually not saying that you should have forced it. I'm saying that as a political party, immediately this seat became vacant. What efforts have you made to go around the county or around that constituency, looking at the membership of your members in that constituency and encouraging the participation of women?
I don't think that is the standard, because as I told you, we as a political party were the first to actually receive that Katiba Institute judgment, and we have gone through it. What it says is that you need to progressively encourage and support women to participate in elections. Now, how do you do that? You see, it is impossible for you over a period of 3 months to develop someone to the stage where they can actually even have the self-confidence to speak before people, to develop their ideas in a way that they can present it. We believe that as a party, this is something that is going to take time, because even the problems that have caused women not to participate in elections are entrenched. It is not something you're going to do over 3 months. Now, we understand, and this is why we are saying you need to create platforms for women How do you create platforms for women? I look at my own journey. If I was not given an opportunity in the first stages to be able to even develop my confidence, to be able to speak in front of people,
Yep.
to be able to speak on TV, on the radio, you need to create those platforms where a woman can speak to a room of 10 people first down there in the villages, then she can speak before 100, then you can bring in the party leadership, she can gauge the confidence of being able to speak before people who matter. So it is something that we have drawn up a proper plan. You will see ODM is the only one that holds this meeting. We had the National Governing Council meeting of the youth last month. I think it was this month, earlier this month in Machakos. We are going to do Women NGC in Kajiado this coming month. And then to cascade those sorts of forums down there to the villages. I was in Bungoma recently. And it is using those platforms such as those. And you allow people to speak from the counties, the wards, all the way to the polling station level. And you as a leader being there, you can be able to identify someone who has at least the basic genetic makeup of politics, because it also takes a certain time. And then you can say this one, if molded, if supported, they can become something. You saw, like yesterday, when we announced, even before yesterday, when we were reconstituting our board, the National Elections Board, we have even included a young lady from the Ma community as one of the commissioners in the National Elections Board. You look at the Legal Affairs Committee that we named yesterday. You need to bring these people around politicians and political processes for them to get some feel of the biashara, so that by the time you're getting to address people, or even engage in other political party activity, you have some idea of what happened.
When was the ruling?
Yeah?
When was the Katiba Institute ruling?
I believe it was about 2 years ago.
All right. So
Yes.
in 2 years' time,
Yes.
you're saying you're talking about ODM drawing up plans. This is the time when you're
Correct.
rolling out these plans and so on and so forth. How
Correct.
much time do you give yourselves as ODM to ensure that you can then meet the requirements of this particular ruling, or to ensure that as
Actually, we
ODM you
need
can
to
sit
be-
back and say, in the next election, we have ensured that we have at least 40% female candidates?
First of all, Latif, I can guarantee you, and I want to inform you that ODM, when it submitted its list of aspirants for the 290 constituencies, we were just a few percentage points away from meeting that threshold of having at least 1/3 of your aspirants being of the opposite gender. Even right now, the people who are in parliament, if you look at the totality of parliament, ODM is at 29% female, and the balance is men. So going forward in 2022, what we anticipate to do is that by the time we submit our list, it should even be more than the third that people are talking about, especially if we have changed the system of elections as we have proposed in the BBI to have a mixed member proportionate representation system. Then we will not be having this discussion in the future. But we have put programs to be able to support young women who want to participate in elections, to develop them, and even talking to some of these organizations that support female participants in elections, to tell them that these women need money to be given to them early. The financial support needs to come early, so that you develop people from across the regions, from the grassroots, the way I was describing it. It is very difficult for you to come 6 months to the election when nominations have started and so on and so forth. Then you say you have these finances to support women. Those women will not be there. This is the time to develop those people. And I want you to look at ODM as the model, because for us, we provide solutions for real problems, where we don't just talk. And you can be able to see in the activities that we are doing that there is actually a move towards this. As I was saying, the problem with the Katiba Institute division was that it is possible for ODM to comply and have the list that is presented in the 290 constituencies compliant with the gender principle. But then if we don't agree that, for instance, in a constituency like Starehe constituency in Nairobi, all political parties must give a female candidate, then we will still not achieve what we are trying to achieve. Which is why we think that even the Katiba Institute division is not the solution. It might help in terms of growing the women aspirants and politicians, but if it is realizing the gender rules, the gender principle in the Houses of Parliament, what you need is for us to do away with the first past the post system of election. Because as I've given you an example, if ODM fields a woman in Starehe and all the other political parties have fielded men, although they might have given women tickets in Garissa, then we will still not achieve what we want to achieve.
We're speaking with Edwin Sifuna, the Secretary General of ODM. This conversation continues. We hope that in the next couple of minutes we'll also be joined by the Elgeyo Marakwet Senator Kipchumba Murkomen. Good morning. In the room this and every morning is Eric Latif, Nduoko and C.T. Muge. Joining us on the line is Edwin Sifuna, the Secretary General of the Orange Democratic Movement Party.
Mr. Sifuna, when this matter of the Chief Justice's, could I call it an advisory to the President, hit the public sphere, there were many people who had a lot of things to say, but there's one particular comment that is attributed to a lady by the name of Atsango Chesoni. It caught my attention. It was a brief one, but it alluded to the possibility of us having had in our constitution a different form of government than the one we had. Do you believe, for instance, that if we had gone the South African way with our system of government, this issue of the two-third gender rule would not be the issue it is today?
I actually agree, and which is why CJ was saying that if you look at the position of the party, is that the only right solution that is anywhere near the table is the BBI proposal to do away with the first past the post system of election, and you have a mixed member proportionate representation system. Of course, it will come with its challenges. We will have to, as of necessity, see an expanded house. Because if we are going to retain the 290 constituencies and then that are elected directly, and then you have people also voting for political parties, and then out of that, proportionately you allocate seats to meet the gender question depending on the number of votes a political party has received and also the population of the area. It will deal with the question of one man, one vote in terms of equality of the vote. There are constituencies who feel, for instance, where I come from in Kandui, your member of parliament has 100,000 registered voters on the register, and his colleague from Garissa town has less than 10,000 people on the register, and yet he gets to have the same vote in the house. So you will have certain counties because of their populations getting allocated more seats proportionately to deal with the question of equality of the vote, and also in that particular formula we're able to meet the gender question because it will be used to balance off the numbers of the genders in the house.
And so this would require what, a referendum, some amendment to the constitution, so we can amend now our system of voting?
I think in the totality of some of the proposals, this is something that will require, for instance, in my understanding of the things that require a referendum, it says if you change the role of parliament, you will as of necessity require that you have a referendum. So we are waiting to see, because we are proceeding from the point of the report that was released in November last year, 4 months. And if those proposals then find favor in the committee and it ends up in the report, we will have a referendum to change the system of elections in this country.
There's something that I have wondered about. It's speculative, of course, but if the president were to heed the Chief Justice's advice, what would we actually see?
That is part of the reason why people are saying we need some bit of clarity on things, because there are various interpretations of what we would be able to see. Number one, if we have an election, does the new parliament get 5 years, or does it serve for the remainder of the term? Because then if you look at the other provisions of the Constitution on what a general election is, it means that a general election is required to be an election of members of parliament and the president that is held on the same day. Does it continue in perpetuity that we will be having midterm elections? Because if the new parliament gets 5 years, it means in 2022 we will only have 3 elections. So there is a number of questions there. Then there is a question of how we appropriate money for that election. If, for instance, it dissolves parliament and it becomes functus officio, can it then allocate money for such an exercise? Where will we get the money? There's all sorts of gray areas that I believe that is where the debate should be, not on whether the Chief Justice was right or wrong, whether the president has any choice or not. We should be discussing the consequential elements of implementation of that directive so that everybody is clear on what is going to happen.
Even looking at what you may have alluded to in terms of a struggle of getting, more women, if we're going to look at it now from the position of political parties, Edwin, and to say that it is necessary to see more women take on a participatory role in politics, and a bulk of that responsibility then would lie with political parties. Oftentimes we say that if not that you take an active role in making sure that these women are there, it would be difficult to get people to latch on. But I still see it as being something that lies very deeply in an attitude or a mental, a mental attitude towards how women can actually be involved. How do you think this can change then to allow that responsibility that is being given to political parties to take its place, to play its role?
Are you still there, Edwin? All right, I think we've lost Edwin, so let's try and get him back. Meanwhile, we are joined by Kipchumba Murkomen, who's the Elgeyo Marakwet senator. Kipchumba, thank you very much for speaking to us, Mheshimiwa. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Eric. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Welcome to the Situation Room.
Thank you.
Just as we get Edwin Sifuna back, he's the ODM Secretary General. The issue that we're discussing is about people who are in the profession of law going into Parliament or joining politics and then interpreting law when they are in politics. Is it just looking at it from a legal perspective, or do you have some partisanship then coming in? And case in point is the advice that we have from the Chief Justice to the President to dissolve Parliament. First of all, what is your view on that advice by the Chief Justice?
First of all, I don't have a problem with the advice of the Chief Justice. His advice to the President is anchored in law. Most of the issues that, remember that the Chief Justice is basically performing an administrative function while transmitting that communication. He's not doing it as a judge of the highest court. That is his duty, administrative duty, just like he would have done the same as the chair of Judicial Service Commission and other administrative bodies that he oversights. In terms of the legal soundness of his communication, one would have to look at the court order that Parliament should be dissolved. It is there that most of the arguments that are being raised, whether those arguments were properly raised at the High Court. There is even a question as to whether we in Parliament, through our lawyers, took this matter seriously when it came before Justice Mativo, and whether we made the legal arguments we are trying to make now. What also is important to note is that even the appeal, as the Chief Justice noted, our lawyers may not take it seriously. And that is where I think the speakers of both houses should have, if they received the order from the court, should have actually brought it to our notice as leaders. I remember our leadership, and we were busy pushing for this gender bill, and aware that already the court had given orders that we should be enforced. So, first of all, I don't have a problem with the message of the Chief Justice. We must also understand, Eric, that this message from the Chief Justice or the advice to the President is, you must understand the background. There is a very bad relationship within the executive, the judiciary, and Parliament. And in fact, if there was a working and relationship where there is a conversation, there is dialogue between the arms of government, the Chief Justice would have spent more time listening to the concerns that came from Parliament or from the executive that are related to that gender rule. Remember also that as a member of Jubilee, I am aware that since 2013, the President has never convened a meeting of Jubilee leadership to discuss how to implement the two-third gender rule in terms of Article 181 of Parliament being having a representation of a third of women. He has, that is one of the issues that the president has never taken seriously, meaning the executive has never taken it seriously. And I admit to you that there is no time, even at my tenure as a leader in parliament, that my party leader has required us to push this issue through. So, in essence, there was no commitment from the beginning. The Chief Justice then, therefore, realizing that his term is coming to an end, would have to answer questions to the people of Kenya for the rest of his life.
Yep.
And this was going to bother him and bother his legacy if he didn't do something about it. So just for him to go home in 3 months and say, okay, there were some letters, there were some orders related to the gender issue, and I did nothing about it, would have been terrible for him. So as a person, the Chief Justice has cleaned his hands and performed his duty. And I think he is perfectly in order to have done what he did. And I think we need to stop trivializing the question of two-thirds gender rule. For us, we must think about it not just about women coming to parliament, but women being part and parcel of decision-making in this country, women being on the decision table, and we must appreciate that we are poorer if more than half of the population of the country are the minority when it comes to decision-making. Look at the few women who have been nominated and elected to parliament and the impact they have made in parliament and our legislative system. Look at what they are doing in their constituencies. Look at the kind of bills they are pushing that deal with matters of family, of women, of children. So we are richer if we can bring as many persons who are of the other gender to the table to be part of decision making. And their thinking is very important for our governance. So for me as a person, if we don't think about this issue selfishly, this is a great moment. We must thank the Chief Justice for taking the bold step. If for nothing else, it's for us to come back to our senses and discuss the question of gender parity and gender equity in the country and take it seriously. There was a time when we were told, even in colleges of parliament, that parliament is likely to be dissolved. None of us took it seriously. People just thought, it's a joke. Who will dissolve parliament? Not possible. But the Chief Justice has brought that conversation to the table that is so serious that it can lead to a dissolution of a parliament and lead to a massive election so that it can awaken the spirit of Kenyan men and women on the importance of having women
this conversation.
Part of the representation.
So, I mean, looking at it, it's clear that everybody has this thought that it is absolutely important for women, or this gender discussion is one that is quite important. So then if I can just, take a step back, though, and say, and this is for you, Edwin, as well as you, Kipchumba. So then what's to say or what's to guarantee, even without this threat of dissolution over the heads of members of parliament, what is to guarantee that this conversation is going to take center stage moving forward? And that something will actually be done about it?
Thank you very much. I think you were referring to something about our societal norms and beliefs before I got disconnected.
Yeah.
But the truth is, people must now walk the talk. And for us, we have said as a political party, because the leadership is very clear that this is not an issue that we need to beat around the bush. If you look at the recent changes in the management of the party, we have put together a new NEP and a new disciplinary committee, and out of the 10 members in those two committees, 6 of them are women. The Legal Affairs Committee that we constituted yesterday, 4 out of the 10 members are women, and the 3 of those 10 are actually within the youth bracket. So it is about political parties walking the talk. It's not just about talking about these things and then we cannot see any clarity in terms of actions that are being taken to include women in all positions of decision making. The challenge to us, and we have accepted this, is that when we go into the next election, we must have a system of electing that actually guarantees we can beat the hurdles that have been put in place to prevent women from getting elected. Yeah.
Are you introducing the BBI conversation when you say that when you go into the next election, we must ensure this? I mean, you also said that for us to do that, for us to change how we are electing our representatives into parliament, then we must look at having constitutional amendment that takes us to a referendum. Are you introducing a referendum and a BBI conversation in this now?
No. I think that conversation has always been on the table, Eric. We are saying that we have a constitutional moment in the country. We have to look at the totality of all the challenges we have had with the constitution so that we don't go into referenda every year. It is possible for us to deal with the 20% that people were saying was going to give us challenges in one sweep, so that we deal with even issues of balance of power between the National Assembly and the Senate. I'm sure Kipchumba agrees. The equality of the vote, of the judiciary, and making it a bit more accountable by introducing people like the officers like the judiciary ombudsperson, strengthening devolution to make the ward the basis of development. All these things that people have been saying would encourage more transparency, more accountability of the people to essentially make what is a good constitution better. So we include even this issue of the gender question.
Let's hear whether the senator agrees with it. Senator, when you hear this and this conversation now coming up, the solution as is being preferred by the ODM Secretary General also lies in us discussing constitutional amendments now.
First of all, I congratulate ODM for now focusing on within their party on how to strengthen women issues, women representation in Parliament. And I always tell Senator Rengo and team that I wish they just brought one senator who is a woman. Senate would already be a two-third house. Because at the moment we have, Jubilee only brought 3 elected senators to Parliament. That is Senator Fatuma, Senator Susan Twig, and Senator Kamar. And had we gotten only one from the ODM side or any other party, we are only missing one senator to be two-thirds in the Senate. In the terms of governors, you remember Jubilee was able to get 2 women governors, and then Governor Ngilu was a CS in Jubilee government before she became in our party. So basically the point is that there is a lot that can be done outside the amendment of the law in terms of supporting women and encouraging them. If you look at the women that were nominated to Parliament, the 11th Parliament, you will find those who come from marginalized groups, whether it is Samburu, people like Inasara Korere are now in Parliament. We have Sophia, who though was not nominated, came from Garissa for the first time, a woman from the north to be elected, and so many other parts of the country. And so the point I'm trying to make is that representation, there are things that the party can do by nominating women, exposing them to leadership, like Sifuna said, in their party and other avenues, so that then they can be ready and prepared to run for office. And I think that is a conversation that cannot wait for BBI. BBI is neither here nor there. It is something that is hidden. We usually told it for 2 people. So those are private conversations. What we need to have is a national conversation on gender issue, on a question of ensuring that women are involved in leadership. This BBI is more about creating positions for another, 5 men to be elected to higher positions in office, and I don't think it has been predicated on ensuring gender parity in the country.
But does it provide that opportunity?
Of course. If there was going to be a referendum, definitely it was going to provide an opportunity. But I can tell you, Eric, from where I stand, the whole BBI referendum is not something that is absent to many Kenyans. It's not something that we think it's going to happen soon. From my own estimation, it's not a walk in the park. It's not something you can say it will just happen like this. And particularly, the way Parliament has been currently constituted or declared, or as recommended by the Chief Justice, it taints the credibility of Parliament to participate in amending the Constitution. And whereas there is this clamor that we need to do something about amending the Constitution, we can't do it in Parliament that we have. That is why unlike Sifuna, of course, can't blame him. Unlike him, I am saying let us dissolve Parliament now. Let's dissolve Parliament today. Let's go for that election. Some people are saying if we dissolve Parliament today, less women will be elected. Let's go for that dissolution. Even if lesser women are going to be elected than today, let that Parliament arrive with the urgency to amend, to provide the mechanism that we will use to ensure that the Parliament is has a two-third representation, has not more than two-third representation of one gender. So for me, the statement of dissolution of Parliament will forever remind Kenyans the importance of having women and all genders and all people of all say gender, person with disability, youth. It will become a reminder that if we don't take this issue seriously, consequences ensue. So for me, the only way we can follow through the advice of the Chief Justice and to make sure that this issue becomes as serious as it should is to dissolve Parliament, not tomorrow, today.
You said unlike Sifuna. Sifuna, is that your position?
Yeah, just Eric, you should not be letting Kipchumba get away with some of the things that he's saying, because when he says that the BBI is a two-man conversation, he forgets that he attended some of his public consultations. The problem I have with Kipchumba and his team is that when the question is placed to them, what is your proposal on addressing specific problems? You see, even this issue of gender, he's just talking about it in a very nebulous manner. You cannot pick what idea he has given. How can he, as a senator, be the one telling us that Parliament should sit down and give us a framework to achieve the gender principle? He should be telling us that this is the idea we are proposing. It is also very disheartening because even when they were invited publicly, the deputy president, who is Kipchumba's leader, he has refused to let us benefit from his wisdom. When a country is having a conversation about solving problems and you want to hold yourself out as somebody who has these ideas, but you'll only implement when you are elected, yet the conversation is happening now. I don't remember the deputy president ever giving his views to this team. He sent Kipchumba to Mombasa, for instance, and instead of Kipchumba taking that opportunity to give us a solution to the land question, for instance, in Mombasa, he got into this thing that he's talking about now, that BBI has no role to play in addressing the problems of the country. For us as ODM, we have said we want to provide specific solutions to specific problems. So when there is a problem, a constitutional problem, for instance, the push and pull between the executive and the judiciary on appointment of judges.
Yep.
ODM has proposed a specific solution to have a self-executing mechanism in appointment of judges similar to the way laws are self-executing after 14 days. That is a solution to a real problem.
We're coming to the end of the show.
Ask my brother. Let me just finish.
Ask him the question.
Always when you have us on these shows, ask Kipchumba what is his specific solution to the gender question. Because for us, we have proposed that we can have a mixed member proportionate representation system that will solve the problem.
So let's hear it from him. Kipchumba, what is Jubilee Asili's solution?
First of all, Eric, I take exception with the infantile interpretations of Mr. Sifuna over the deputy president. And I take that exception because, first of all, deputy president is not my party leader. My party leader is Uhuru Kenyatta. Uhuru Kenyatta has not presented anything to any BBI committee, and I'm entitled to my views as a member of Jubilee, which Sifuna should concentrate on his party, to say that as Jubilee, we are presiding, and I don't advise this BBI process because it is the most, is a process, one of the processes in this country that is shrouded with secrecy. The most comprehensive processes that have happened in this, of the most comprehensive processes that have happened in this country in any law reform, BBI process is shrouded in mystery. Raila Odinga, we don't know what is his views. He changes from one view to the other. We don't know the views of the president. He has never said it. We don't know the views of Jubilee. The president has never even led Jubilee to present any proposal to this BBI.
What were you doing in Mombasa, Kipchumba?
Please, now I gave you your time to listen. So we know that Jubilee Party has never met to discuss anything. I was in Mombasa to tell the people of Mombasa, Nyeri, Kitui, to tell them that we must resist this BBI process that is forcing the people of Kenya to amend the constitution in secrecy for the benefit of two people. And my views are public, and my views are personal.
Okay, Kipchumba, what is your solution to this, to what we have now, the gender issue?
I have given you the most concrete solution, that we need to dissolve parliament as envisaged in Article 261 of the Constitution, so that a new, clean parliament, purified parliament, can come back now to come and amend the Constitution to provide for an extra seats for women to come to parliament.
And what is your proposal for that provision?
The current parliament, as it is at the moment, by failing to do perform its responsibilities, is defiled. We cannot say that that parliament is a clean parliament to continue with this process. So the first concrete solution I'm giving is the same one that the Chief Justice has proposed, that parliament be dissolved. We re-elect parliament. Let's go back for election. Let Murkomen go back. If I lose to a woman, so be it. If I come back, I together with other leaders, we make sure. Because, Eric, maybe unknown to most of you, I was at the forefront in terms of pushing for various legislation, bills of different forms of bills that we wanted to pass in parliament. But parliamentarians, most of them were opposed to it directly, and they're saying we don't want women to be brought to the house through nomination. So for us, we have, for me, the most urgent issue at the moment is to dissolve parliament.
Does this dissolution of parliament guarantee that you will see a mental change of mind? Because we've talked about this issue, that this whole gender issue is not about, it's about a mental state, it's a mental attitude. Will the dissolution of parliament, Kipchumba, guarantee that this mental attitude then will change with whomever comes in to a new parliament?
The constitution envisages that if you dissolve parliament, and I appreciate the drafters of our constitution, if we dissolve parliament, we will have passed a serious statement that the new parliament coming in will know that if they don't do something, it will also be dissolved.
They too will go.
So, number two, we are having now a conversation about women empowerment, gender parity, gender equity. All this conversation is happening because we are discussing dissolution. Don't you think that then that helps political parties who are not taking this issue seriously to progress their conversation to a certain level where now women will be given priority at the moment? Because the gender that is suffering now is women. In future, it might be men. But the point is that conversation is now taking place in an environment that has been forced by law and by the Chief Justice proposing a dissolution of parliament. I want to say that because today we are deciding gender, I'll discuss land issues with Sifuna when the time comes. We need to focus on seizing this opportunity, dissolve parliament. Let's elect another one in December, and next year, by March next year, a new parliament will have found solution to this issue.
As you conclude, Sifuna, your closing remarks, should we dissolve parliament immediately?
I think, Eric, I said at the start of the show that that matter is now before the courts. We don't really need to go into details of the merits of the case. But I gave my view on what I think is the position of the law. As a lawyer, I believe that the Constitution leaves very little in terms of wiggle room for the President and the Chief Justice, and they have proceeded in accordance with the law. It is the consequential actions that are being discussed now. I would have loved to hear if Murkomen thinks the new parliament will have a 5-year term or it will have a 2-year, it will serve the remainder of this parliament's term. There's a lot of grey areas that need to be cleared, and then we proceed forward as a country.
Kipchumba,
Eric,
fresh term or just it's a by-election?
Yeah, that is a good question. I think first of all, there's a solution to that. In 2012, you remember we were to have elections in. Some people thought it was August 2012, or it was going to be August 2013. eventually the Supreme Court gave an advisory opinion that led us having elections on March 4th, 2013. So that is a very easy one. In my own opinion, if we were going to elect to dissolve Parliament, you will have dissolved the 12th Parliament. We will be discussing about the 13th Parliament, which will serve its term for 5 years. But the best way to resolve that issue is to take an advisory opinion of the Supreme Court as to what period of time will that Parliament serve. These arguments, including the one Sifuna is making and myself, be made from both sides, will help the Supreme Court make a decision. And I think the right decision will be that's a Parliament for 5 years. And if, I know there are conflicting sections of the Constitution which says that general elections happen at the same time for all the 6 seats on 2nd of August, every 50 and so forth. But those questions will have to be presented before the Supreme Court. The advantage we will have, Eric, is that if we were to have the 3 elections of the women rep, the senator and National Assembly, member of National Assembly, or somewhere in this December, so that in 2022 we'll only elect 3 seats. It will be very beautiful that we will have a parliament going on, and it's not based on presidential elections. When we will have the next presidential elections, it will be a shorter period. It will help in stability of the country. Will be akin to what happens in the United States, where you have elections every 2 years, and the presidential elections not necessarily go with the senatorial and the Congress elections. So if we were to do that, there would be extra benefits.
You see benefits.
What's important to me, notwithstanding my arguments, whether it is for the 2 years remaining, or for 1 and something year remaining, or it's going to serve for 5 years, I would be very happy if Parliament is dissolved to make a statement on this issue once and for all.
Asante sana. Gentlemen, we want to thank you very much for speaking to us today. Like you said, we'll invite you again. We need to talk about the issue of land as well, and this is a matter that is really crucial and needs to be discussed, and also leadership. So there are those that are proposing, let's expand our executive. There are those that are opposed to the expansion of the executive, and we've heard from both of you. We'll invite you again, and we hope that you'll accept our invitation.
Thank you, Eric. Anytime, but there was a very bad echo from your side, and it was interfering with my thought process.
Pole sana for that.
I apologize.
Okay.
Thank you.
Asante sana.
Thank you. Asante sana.
All right, have a good one.